Hi guys, so what does Lee Anderson bring to the Reform UK party? Well, who better to ask than another Tory who defected to the previous incarnation of Reform, the Brexit party, some years ago, Anne Widdecombe. The former Tory claims in this Reform UK friendly GB News interview that Lee Anderson speaks the language of the Redwall because of their support for Brexit and traditional Conservative values. Have a listen to this.
At our next guest, because I'm now joined by former Conservative MP Anne Widdecombe, who is now, of course, a leading luminaire in the Reform Party with Richard Tice. Widders, welcome to the show. Always a pleasure. So, if the Reform Party needed that working class credibility, that Redwall kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? The Redwall kind of dynamo that the party needed to drive it through, is this the right man? Is this a canny appointment?
Yes, it's a very, very canny appointment, and it's terrific that Lee has decided to join us, because, as you say, he speaks for the Redwall, and that is where Brexit got a huge number of its votes and an awful lot of its support from, as you will know, and therefore it's right territory for reform, but we do need the right person. We need the person who speaks the language of the Redwall, the sort of person that the Redwall would trust. We've got him in the shape of Lee Anderson.
Do you think this will play out internally? He's a big character, he's got a big presence, and he's used to being the head honcho. Would he have to be kind of let to do his own devices, or can you see there being a potential situation where a few people within the party are rubbed the wrong way, Anne?
Oh, I don't think so. I think the one thing about the Reform Party, the refreshing change from the Tory party, that it isn't full of factions and divisions and people fighting for number one and all the rest of it.
Of course there aren't. There's like half a dozen people in the party. This is ridiculous. Factions within Reform UK. There are factions within the Conservative Party because they won a massive majority at the last election. And Labour will see factions within it before the next election after this one. When you have a big party, a broad church, of course you're going to have factions. But Reform UK doesn't have that problem because it has very few people in the party. And of course, they're all sycophants for Nigel Farage. I think you probably have to take an oath of allegiance to Nigel Farage when you become a member. Now, to respond to some of the things she pointed out here, first of all, she said that Lee Anderson speaks the language of the Redwall. Lee Anderson speaks the language of his constituency. Well, Lee Anderson is actually not doing very well in his constituency, even when he was the deputy chair of the Conservative Party. Polling for him was pretty poor, and it was likely that he was going to lose his seat as a Conservative, and the Labour Party would win this seat back. It's a traditional Labour seat. It's going to flip back to Labour. It's almost guaranteed. Lee Anderson had won it in 2019 with a majority of about 3,400. So that's going to be completely wiped out. Now he's an MP for Reform UK. Well, then he's actually going to have to deal not with the Labour Party as a problem, but also the Conservative Party. So the Conservatives are going to run against Lee Anderson. The Labour Party are going to run against Lee Anderson, and Lee Anderson is going to lose his seat. Now, this is a benefit, of course, for Reform UK. It's a shot in the arm. They have this candidate. They have someone in Parliament, a bit like George Galloway, somebody, a loudmouth who's going to raise the profile of the party. But is it going to actually win them seats? I don't think so. She also mentioned about how, he's not going to create problems within the Reform UK party, and I don't think so. There's no real advantage for Lee Anderson to try and take over or try and create problems. He's going to do as he's told. It's possible, I'm not claiming that it has happened, but it's possible that money has changed hands here. Because if you think about it for Lee Anderson, where is the advantage here for him? He's going to lose his seat at the next election. He could have just remained as an independent in the House of Commons, raised his, shouted and ranted and raved as he would normally do in the House of Commons. But this helps the Reform UK party more than it helps Lee Anderson. He brings something to the table. He gives them a sort of, I hate to say, legitimacy. And this is, of course, going to help them as they compete against the Conservatives going forward. He can be, brought around to campaign, and he'd be a good campaigner probably because he speaks the language of the crazies and the lunatics. and these crazies and lunatics want to vote for a party. They probably are not happy with the Conservatives, but they're not sure about Reform UK. Well, then Lee Anderson speaks their language and he can convince them to vote for Reform UK. So this is going to damage the Conservatives, and it's of course damaging to Rishi Sunak. But what does he bring to the table? Pretty much nothing, just a name. But that might be enough for Reform UK. But once again, when it comes to Brexit, this is not... support for Brexit is declining also in Ashfield. It's not actually going to help reform. Yes, there are some Brexiteers left, but I think they're not going to make much of an impact when it comes to the general election itself. So when the election takes place, you're going to have an extra candidate who's going to split the right-wing vote. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.